edition of The Assignment with me, Innocent Piri. Of course, you can simply call me IP. We're live from Muvi Television in Zambia's capital city, Lusaka. Remember, some of you are watching us on Topstar Decoder channel 104. And for those that are watching us across the borders of Zambia, of course, you can follow this conversation on our social media page, Ask Muvi, and send us those questions as well as comments. We'll be able to, of course, appreciate your appreciation. Now, on October 24th, 1964, Zambia became independent under the leadership of our late founding father, Dr. David Buchizia Kaunda, on the UNIP ticket. He governed Zambia for 27 years before handing over power to late Dr. Frederick Chiluba and the MMD, which ruled the affairs of this country for 20 years. In 2011, the PF, the PF, under the leadership of late Michael Shilukasata, took over. And in 2014, the country again commemorated its 50 years of independence, which was known as a Jubilee celebration. And of course, the event was officially officiated by former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu in the acting capacity at the time. Now today, the country is again celebrating its 57 years of independence anniversary, of course, with a new government and a new president in place under the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema. And this says theme, for those that might have missed out, is being commemorated under the theme, celebrating the new dawn anchored on good governance and national unity and development. Very important theme, actually. I need to repeat that. Of course, the theme is celebrating the new dawn anchored on good governance and national unity and development. That's a topic we have this evening. Let me just unveil my guest on the program, of course, coming from the former Patriotic Front, who is in charge of information. His name is Honorable Raphael Nakachinda. He comes to you live on our screen, Muvi Television. Honorable, welcome to Muvi Television and The Assignment in general.
Thank you very much, Mr. Piri. I'm honored to have been invited this evening. I honored the invitation after so many times that I've not been able to find a moment to interact. And good evening to our viewers. I look forward to an engaging discussion.
Thank you so much. That's my guest on the program. Of course, I follow us on social media and, of course, other platforms that I've just mentioned. Honorable, let's now begin. We are celebrating our 57 years of independence as a country, and we have to be proud of ourselves for that, I believe so.
Yes, yes. I think we have to be proud of the fact that 57 years ago, after a long journey of fighting for political freedom, eventually it was achieved. Of course, history is documented. There are a few other details I think that we still need to put on paper in terms of what could have been a cocktail of many contributing factors for us to be able to achieve independence at the time. But I think we also, as a country, have to celebrate the fact that the 50 years of our self-governance, we have been able to evolve from obviously multi-party democracy at the beginning towards 1972. It seemed to have been a challenge to maintain that system of governance, because I think the imperialists found an opportunity through multipartism to be able to destabilize the agenda at the time that was being anchored by the frontline states to have the continent liberated, because outside Zambia, Ghana, Malawi, and a few countries that had attained independence at the time, the majority of the countries on the continent were still under colonial rule. And Dr. Kaunda, I think we have to continue celebrating his life. His leadership was among those that were dedicated, committed, and I think he steered the party in the direction of wanting to contribute immensely to the liberation of our continent. So eventually we were forced to get into a one-party state due to many other factors, internal and external. But along the way, I think that system of governance proved to have been very injurious to our internal affairs politically and also economically. By the time we're getting into the late 80s or mid-80s, I think the country was becoming agitated, dissatisfied. By the time we're getting to 1990, it was really clear that the only way to go, as it were, it was multi-party democracy. And over time, I think we've proved from that time that whenever the Zambian people make a demand, the will of the people always prevails. There was a push and a campaign for a referendum to have the constitution amended to reintroduce multipartism, but we didn't need it to even, we needed not to even go for a referendum because it was very clear. The voice of the people was very clear, and therefore we had the amendment to Article 4 at the time that ushered in multipartism. Fast forward, MMD, got into office. There were a few attempts to change the constitution. By the time we're getting in 2001, 1999, 2000, MMD's leader at the time, there was a debate in the country, third term and all that, which also we can't underplay in terms of the impact that debate had in terms of how we progress moving forward as a country in a political manner. The third time, the Zambian people rose, voiced out on the matter, and clearly what we set out to be the system of governance in 1990-1991 prevailed through the voice of the people. And then we had President Manasa come in, and then 10 years later, we had the change of government to Patriotic Front. Now, 57 years down the line, we also have the UPND that have been ushered into office. That story in itself is a success story that needs to be celebrated. Yes, we have internal issues that we need to deal with, but I think this is a story that Zambia must tell to the outside world, that as a country we have been able to hold and evolve, hold ourselves peacefully, evolve politically. We have had dips and highs, but nevertheless we have remained peaceful, and I think we remain a shining example to the world. And at Patriotic Front, we want to continue telling that narrative and separate issues to do with a country and how we should project ourselves to the world, and our internal, political differences that we have. Those, I think, we can address, and we have the capacity as a country to deal with them. And we want to believe that the world expects that we should be able to deal with our internal issues among ourselves. And when we go out there, we're one family, and we present ourselves as a success story on the continent, a country that has held itself peacefully and governed itself well.
Thank you so much, Honorable, and I'm glad that you've taken enough time to just take us through where Zambia is coming from and to where we are today. I appreciate, and this makes my job very easy this evening, so that I don't go, very fine explaining issues or asking you questions. Let's now begin from where we are today, 57 years of independence, and we are celebrating our, of course, 57 years of independence under the theme, celebrating the new dawn, of course, which is being anchored on a good governance, national unit, as well as development. I would request you, because I don't want to infringe you and your gadget that you are wearing right now, just explain regarding the theme that we have using the binoculars.
Well, zooming obviously with the binoculars, but also analyzing the theme. I want to clearly state that this was politically couched. We have reduced the celebration of independence to basically celebrating the fact that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema has won an election and is president today. I think that level of obsession and what I would term as exaggerated notion of self, that he is even failing to distinguish between national matters and political matters. Matters that must be handled at national level and matters that must be handled at political party level. When you say celebrating the new dawn basically depicts the UPND. That's their theme. I hope you understand. I think they could have done better. We can't reduce everything to the political interests and convenience of UPND. President Hakainde Hichilema is now president of the Republic of Zambia, and when it comes to opportunities like the one we have today of celebrating our independence, I think we need to rise above partisan politics. I was shocked today to find that even when it comes to people that he was honoring, they are all basically aligned to the UPND political party. In a way, it was celebrating the UPND. You have even gone to an extent of honoring callers to radio stations who consistently were supporting him as Hakainde Hichilema and the UPND. So it means that in this country, you will be honored and placed on you the presidential insignia of honor and recognition because you are politically aligned. If you are an overzealous cadre of a political party, and if that political party wins, you'll be rewarded for your CEO. You'll be rewarded for calling radio stations to support a political party. I'm not trying to take away that maybe we are offended, or personally I'm offended by proud being recognized, but I think it is misplaced. It should have been recognized within the armpits of a political party. He's a political party cadre who contributed, just like many others, to the victory of UPND, quote unquote, through his contribution through phone calls to radio stations. There are many people. Today I was met by some youths from the UPND who were basically trying to, out of jest say, is the binocracy, working? Are the lenses too clear? And so on and so forth. And in conversating, I remember some of them that have been consistently supporting, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema and supporting the UPND. Some of them have even been in jail. I remember vividly. As politics evolves, you know that I'm from MMD. At some point, we even had, quote unquote, a working relationship with the UPND. Sure. And some of these people we know. We know who sacrificed and who fought and so on. I think Mr. Hakaine's appetite to play to the gallery, the president's appetite to play to the gallery, to try and look a certain way, he's now making serious blunders. What is the justification for honoring Proud Sichaba today? Calling to support UPND, calling to announce that he's UPND and he believes in UPND. Is that the honor to which you can get a Republican presidential insignia of honor placed on him? Elijah Ngwale, what is it, calling on radio stations and supporting Mr. Hakainde Hichilema? Is that how we have reduced that process? You understand what I'm saying? Is that how we have reduced that whole process? I mean, we are becoming a laughstock under this regime. I think there isn't really much premium and thought process applied in making some of these decisions. I think it's an issue of where people are still politically charged, and to that effect they are making what they consider political convenient decisions, which are now backfiring. The theme itself was misplaced because it reduced the whole event to just UPND. The recognition, I can't take away, one of the greatest sons that this country has ever produced is Mr. Anderson Mazaka. In the corporate world, he's one of those that really thrived and succeeded. And I can review to you that at some point, personally, when he chose to get into politics, I was one of the few young people that he interacted with. I had a few misgivings around a very strong notion or narrative of the fact that he could have been, his faith was not very clear. But when it came to his policies and so on, we found each other and we interacted. I mean, his CV is very rich. I mean, he's one of those accomplished, Zambians, well-accomplished Zambians that, was flying the Zambian flag high international and so on in the corporate world. You can't take that away. But to honor him just on the basis that he formed a political party, which now after it has formed government, then it means that then you have to honor Michael Sata at the same time with the same, because he formed GPF, which also formed government. For him, actually, it formed government under his watch, and he became president himself. And then you can talk of any other. So it means that you have set a precedence. Anybody who forms a political party and forms government then must be honored. If that was the spirit of the honor, I mean that recognition. If the spirit of the recognition is about his contribution to the nation, the corporate world, and so on, it takes a different, tangent altogether. So, in my view, is that President Nakachinda could have done better. The UPND must reflect on all these decisions that are being made. Are we sure such an important day would be reduced to that? There are people who may not have the courage to voice out like that, but I can tell you that not only social media, but among the whispers, people are really shocked that we can have that kind of display of politicking at a very, very important national event.
Wow. Maybe it could be you who is shocked, Honorable. Maybe some people that are watching right now, they are going to argue that really we are not shocked, to have a person like Proud, being honored, as well as Mr. Elijah Ngwale, among others, because I think you followed the background to this story. I mean, to the ownership of these individuals. We've been told that Proud has been honored for his community advocacy, activism that he offered during the many years. Besides him belonging to the UPND, which we are not sure if he's a UPND member or is not. But let's look at what he did on behalf of the community. I think I've been one of the people that have been covering Proud for quite so many years now. A person who has been advocating, if there's no water in that area, Proud will pick up a phone call and just call you. There's a problem here, maybe in the garden. We've been told that the police station that we have now in the garden compound there is because of his voice on radio, demanding for good governance and also wanting development in those areas. And the police station is standing because of individuals like him. Mr. Elijah Ngwale is one kind of a person that has been very, consistent in terms of advocating or wanting to see a developed community in Matero, among other areas. Why should we, ignore such kind of individuals for the sake of them maybe belonging or being aligned to a political party? I can belong to a political party, but look, if I'm doing that which is right for my country, why can't you honor me?
Okay, maybe the difficulty I may have myself is that when you say that his advocacy, basically this is a political cadre in UPND that just like Mr. Nakachinda Chilema, just like many other UPND officials and cadres could have spoken on issues they thought that the people in different communities may have been concerned about. And to that effect, the government of the day at the time, Patriotic Front, responded to that. But all I'm saying is that if, for example, you recognize a person who is purely just doing community work and advocacy for the community, not for political reasons, You understand?
Yeah.
But because of his dedication and commitment to, to the community. I mean, there's a silver line. I'm here in my capacity as member of the Central Committee for Patriotic Front.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm going to raise a number of issues which will affect the Zambian people. I hope you give me an opportunity to discuss issues to do with farming, to discuss issues to do with the economy and so on this particular platform. In so doing, I'm contributing, obviously, to my party to express our policy position that is, in contrast to what the UPND are doing. I'm also expressing my passion to see my country prosper. But are you going to say at that particular point, because I featured on these platforms and many other platforms to express myself on behalf of Patriotic Front, that I need now a recognition? To that effect, it means that to get all cadres in PF and in UPND who are speaking out on these issues and honor them. You understand what I'm saying? All I'm saying is that you may not fully appreciate, and I know when it comes to social media, because the UPND have been quite excellent in managing propaganda on social media. We have people bashing who are mainly aligned to UPND because they don't even see anything good in what we say. Good in anybody that says something.
Propaganda, Honorable, before you go on, what do you mean? Because really, if somebody is a social media user, really, and then they sympathize with the UPND government,
you are the
that's
one,
not propaganda.
Mr. Innocent, you are the one now twisting what I'm saying.
Right.
They are social media users, but there are also those who use social media for propaganda. Right. And the UPND has been very good at using social media for propaganda. Today, Nakachinda is a villain, a bad person, and so on and so forth, and they'll call me all kinds of names. If today Nakachinda came and said, Misaka Inde Ichilema is the best man I ever met, I'm telling you, from that very moment of me saying that statement, I become a darling. You understand? That's how come there is too much contradiction within the UPND. Some of the people who were terrible, corrupt people, when they were in PF, the moment they shifted to UPND, they became saints. I hope you understand. At some point, just as a way in jest, I hope my other brother will forgive me. Honorable GBM, Geoffrey Mwamba, at some point when he was defense minister, he was vilified by the UPND through watchdog and so on. He's corrupt, he has gotten contracts, he has gotten all these things, and is the most corrupt minister ever. The day he resigned from Patriotic Front government as minister, later on defected to UPND, this so-called corrupt person became such a saint that he qualified to become a running mate for Misaka and Ichilema in the 2016 general elections. You understand what I'm saying? At some point, Honorable Kambwili was such a buffoon and all kinds of names according to the UPND at a time when he was Minister of Information and so on and so forth, because of possibly his strong character. The day he fell out of favor with Patriotic Front leadership and so on and so forth, when he moved to work with them, he became such a saint that they almost gave him running mate. The day Kambwili you turned and said, this establishment, even if they formed government, I smell a rat here in terms of ethnic inclusion and so on and so forth. Today, and worse still, because Honorable Kambwili was so vocal and said some things. Look at the way he's vilified. Things which, if he was supporting them, they would not even raise at all. I mean, there are a number of people I can point to who at some point were said to be terrible leaders, who today have found themselves favored and holding very prestigious position in this particular government. So all I'm saying is that what would we attribute that to? We attribute that to the fact, to propaganda that is advanced by the UPND. So for us, we are blinded we have chosen to be blinded to that propaganda. We are, anchoring our role to provide checks and balances and our voicing out on issues based on principle. And we know that truth sometimes may take long to be appreciated, but over time it prevails, because propaganda, misinformation, lies have short legs. They run fast, but they get tired too quickly. The truth will definitely catch up with it.
Let me take you to something very interesting, and I want to find out from you in terms of what you think we have achieved as a nation from 1964 until where we are today. Because as we speak right now, of course, we are celebrating our 57 years of independence, but there are our colleagues out there, our mothers and sisters, brothers, that are wallowing in abject poverty, and yet as a country we've had a different or a lot of successful governments that have come in and have gone. But the poverty levels in this country, I'm sure, even if you were to use your binoculars right now, you are going to see that our poverty levels is really alarming. Can we stand here on air and be proud as a nation that indeed we have achieved something as a nation?
If you put it that way, that we have achieved something, that yes, we have achieved something.
What is that?
And we should be proud of it. I mean, we have achieved some relative, whether it is 50 to 60% of political, freedom. It's just that, as it were in the later years, the imperialists have found another formula to which they would influence, the political processes in African countries. And Zambia is not, unfortunately, is one of those that have, to a large extent, suffered that. From 1964, I think the challenge that African continent has suffered is to have economic independence. We have still continued to depend on institutions that are established by these imperialists, superpowers, the IMF, the World Bank, and all these. And when you look at the facilities that usually are given to African countries, they are tailored in such a way that we remain impoverished. They are tailored in such a way that they project us to be incompetent, and tailored in such a way that our economies will never be self-sustaining. We have to depend on external hands, which really doesn't make sense, because most of the developed countries are dependent on Africa for their economies to thrive, whether it is in terms of natural resources. But in certain instances, even when it comes to revenue generated from African countries, some of them are deposited in foreign banks, France and other nations, basically, which give them which add to their equity, that then gives their economic profile more attractive on the global market, while we remain carrying a begging bowl. It's a very complex situation, but very few African countries have had the courage to confront the status quo and say, can we revisit this situation? We can't continue on a merry-go-round. Those who have attempted have either been assassinated or indeed been removed unconventionally from government. President Edgar Chagga, in his soft approach to matters, soft but firm, you notice that he took a different trajectory. Every time there was advocacy from the UPND, we need the IMF program and so on, he softly was pushing, can we find a homegrown solution to deal with our economic situation? Because it doesn't make sense that we have everybody trooping into Zambia to extract our copper, and it finds its way to the international market. Money is banked outside there, and when it comes to us getting our dividends through either mining royalties or indeed taxes and so on, it's always a complex process. And some of our experts here in terms of tax management or understanding of that process have either been compromised or been bought to be on the side of what I would term as imperialists, are actually helping them to siphon resource out of that. So we began to see moves in the direction of having Zambia have, Zambians through the government have a stake in the mining, sector, for example, through the mining entities that have so far been, taken over by government. One of which is doing flamboyantly well, to the embarrassment of the current minister, who was coming with an attitude suggesting that there must have been something fishy, corruption or something, and Zambians, as it were, you remember the UPND in opposition, almost saying that Zambians have no capacity to run these mines. When the minister went to visit the mine in Mufurila, on the copper belt, he was shocked to find that they're actually performing better than they were performing before, IDC took over. So all I'm saying is that for 55 years, the ones who seem to have had the courage to confront these imperialist regimes were the likes of the Kaundas. It's just that by the time Kaunda was beginning to make radical decisions economically, having spent so many years in the battle to liberate the region. I mean, we had the Zimbabwe's, we had the Namibia's, we had Mozambique with its own challenges, we had the apartheid regime in South Africa, and all these complex situations and so on that were on his shoulder, more or less, to spearhead the freedoms of our people in those areas. By the time he was shifting to get into the direction of dealing with the economy, and I must tell you that even when it comes to the famous privatization program, it was on the cards of UNIP, but it's only that it delayed to be implemented. And the way UNIP wanted to process or proceed with the privatization program, had it been undertaken in that manner, possibly would not have killed the industrial base that the country, have lost over time. But under the MMD, we were going in the same direction, but I think we're more theoretical. By the time we're beginning to appreciate the consequence of the radical steps that were taken in the privatization process, we had lost the industrial base. Now we're an import-dependent country. Hence, during the COVID-19, we're highly exposed. So the Patriotic Front had created a very strong base in terms of infrastructure development, which was supposed to be giving us dividends almost immediately. But climate change plus the COVID that hit, we're completely destabilized. The reason we, as Patriotic Front, lost election in 2021 was not because the UPND were favored. It's just that, as it were, the effects of the COVID-19 on the day-to-day livelihood of the people had a toll. So the people went to vote not for UPND, but went to vote against PF because of the difficulties. So, and in explaining to the Zambian people, maybe we're not fully effective, but as it were, we're seated here. If we're honest, the Zambian people are beginning to regret that we may have possibly made a premature decision to get rid of Patriotic Front, because these that we have ushered into office clearly seems to be confused. They don't know what to do. From inauguration to today, it has been one disaster after another, one embarrassment after the other, and everybody shocked. Shocked, but it's difficult to challenge your own decision too soon, because you are still under the euphoria that maybe something good will come out of this arrangement. I can only say to the Zambian people, let's brace ourselves for a ride of drama, a ride of being led by people who are incompetent, people who are purely greenhorns, that may not be able to have a solution at all at any given time. And we should be courageous to raise these issues, because the Zambian people must be watching. Hopefully they can all get binoculars and watch closely this government and enjoy the ride of drama up to 2026.
Well, when you use words like being incompetent, words like confused, I think you are being too hard. And I want to believe that there are people that are arguing with you that I think it's too quite early for you to begin to use such kind of terminologies on the UPND administration. Furthermore, Honorable,
okay, let me
finish my question. Yeah, please. Would you agree with me that economically as a country, we are still being colonized?
Yes, and
from your background that you've given, it tells me that we are still being colonized. Not
yes. All right. And now, I must qualify that. I have attempted to qualify
that. Yeah. Now my question is, Honorable, how do you feel sitting on this platform, the national broadcaster, and begin to lament you as a politician who has been in government before, and not only in the PF as a minister, but you were also in the previous, regime of the MMD, although you were not a minister at the time, but you were part and parcel of those individuals that were driving the economy of this country. The question is, why have we delayed as a nation really to become self-independent in terms of financing our own resources? For lack of better words, I think I want to be a little bit biased on the UNIP or under President Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, the late, that maybe we can excuse him and his UNIP government at the time going by what you've just given, because he had a lot of work out there, not only for Zambia, but also helping to liberate other countries around the continent. But we had the MMD, for God's sake, which you belonged. Again, we had the Patriotic Front, again, which was in power for 10 years. Why didn't you realize that? I think IMF, among other organizations, are not supposed to continue financing us. But your government as well, the PF, was also depending much on the IMF. I should believe that even the money that we are about to get from IMF, the discussions possibly were fulfilled by your former government.
Okay, let me put it this way. I do appreciate your question, but I must tell you that that's why I qualified that every time a leadership began to question the involvement of imperialists in the the management of our economies,
it's taken out.
It's either
assassinated.
They are gotten rid of, or they create an environment to which that person will be, moved out of power, because there is always a mechanism put in place to make African leaders look incompetent, like they don't know what they are doing.
Right.
After MMD was pushed in the direction of privatization in the manner that it was conducted, to a point of destroying the industrial base, the moment the MMD leadership began to say, oops, I think here we may have gotten it wrong.
Right.
We need to reverse. We went to the extreme left or right, if you like. We need to come to the center and begin to implement policies that are more practical in nature other than theoretical, to accommodate the economic dynamics that we need to deal with in the country. Other than being extreme capitalists, let's begin to get in the center where we can also consider dealing with the weak. I'm speaking in general terms.
Sure.
And therefore slowing down on some of those policies imposed on the new government. And I must tell you that by the time the movement for multi-party democracy was gaining momentum, these interest groups began to speak to some of our leaders, even taking people like Dr. Chiluba out of this country to identify who could be the president at the time. I mean, those are details for another day. But I can tell you that before we begin to think of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, these imperialist organizations and countries, they are thinking generationally. So as we are engaging here on Muvi TV and so on, they have possibly even gone past Misaka in the HLM. They identified the UPND at the time of inception, that maybe they needed to establish a political entity that they can use to drive the agenda. Hence, the affiliation and inclination of the UPND and the leader, Misaka and HLM, was no more pro-West. And those who sponsored the UPND financially and so on, basically those who have had interest in the economic sectors of our country, particularly the mining sector. And those are not secrets, these are open secrets. But as we move forward, what happened? The moment MMD and Dr. Chiluba began to say, no. At some point, I must review that one former Prime Minister of Britain even went on a point of demanding from Dr. Chiluba that he should privatize ZESCO and some of these critical public entities. When Dr. Chiluba refused, Then a propaganda machine was put in place. He's corrupt, he's what, and so on. They beat him to a point where, by the time Dr. Chiluba was saying, no, the third term issue was just a debate. The Zambian people have clearly stated that they don't want it and I'm not ready for it. MMD will choose a different leader than myself. Next thing, for Mwanawasa to survive as a president, especially that they came as a minority president, because I think he won by 29%, against 28% of UPND or 27% of UPND, FDD some percentage, and main political parties that eventually accumulated to 100%, because that time it was first past the post. Mwanawasa was forced to politically survive to undertake the so-called fight against corruption, because he needed to win the international, so-called international community's goodwill. Who does he go for? Chiluba. Goes into parliament, goes and presents 169 allegations against Chiluba, clearly stating that he has committed these offenses. In a procedural manner, the immunity was lifted. You know the embarrassing thing? All the 169 allegations against Chiluba fell to the floor because they could not really even sum up to be a reasonable indictment against him. They had to create new 6 charges against Chiluba and dragged the whole process of the court appearance, because now Chiluba was being used as a PR tool. When he appears in court, then some imperialist arrangement are happy about it. They were even financing that whole arrangement to the detriment of the nation and its unity, but to the benefit of a few who were part of the so-called task force and whatever it is. The same script, Mr. Innocent, the same script of that time is actually happening right now. I can tell you that the people who were organized, mobilized, put together to push that agenda at the time by the same organization, right now they are being positioned to capture President Hakainde Hichilema. Hence you have heard statements like fast-track court. Individuals are positioning themselves at Community House and other places to take positions at ACC, to take positions possibly at the National Prosecution's Office and other places, or to come and replicate the same so-called fight against corruption. It will waste people's time. They'll be going after innocent individuals. What has happened now? Most of the people that have been harassed, either searched and so on, is either they have found nothing, or they have repossessed, properties or vehicles and things which legitimately people got, and it's becoming very problematic to take these people to court. But this whole thing is being done under the facade of fighting against corruption, but it's all to appease some imperialist arrangement that sponsored this regime to get into government. So all I'm saying is that in terms of economic freedom, we haven't attained. As brilliant as Mr. Hakainde may want to project himself, for as long as he doesn't liberate himself from the yoke of being a puppet of the West, he will not be able to achieve anything for this country. Zambia is endowed with natural resources. Our population is still very small. We are just about above 17 to 18 million Zambians. Our resource base is so huge, our equity is so huge, even for us to become the so-called laughingstock about the debt we have accumulated for infrastructure is an embarrassment. The money we're talking about, somewhere slightly above 11 to 12, 12 billion to about $13 billion, to say to ourselves that we are so indebted and it's like there's no hope.
And that's money actually that mostly or largely was borrowed by you people.
Yes, and it was borrowed for a good purpose, which we're supposed to actually, instead of beating each other, we're supposed to celebrate, because Mr. Hakainde Hichilema right now, he doesn't even have to worry about infrastructure. He is now swimming into the glory of commissioning infrastructure that was constructed under PF. That's how come he was in Indora recently about the Simon Mwansaka Pwepo International Airport, which is of international standard, Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, and many other facilities that have been put in place, all as a foundation for economic growth. So we are going to waste our time fighting over petty issues for the next 5 years, blaming each other, because right now, what should have happened if we were really a country that is poised towards moving forward? Mr. Hakainde Hichilema should have been working hand in hand with his predecessor, Dr. Edgar Chakarungu, especially that this is a gentleman that has honored him in terms of the transition to make sure it was peaceful, which has been celebrated globally, and maybe even assign him to do some work for the country away from politicking locally. You understand what I'm saying? Which is what happens in the US, which is what happens somewhere else. But those countries will not permit us to do that. What those countries will do is to put in the mind of Mr. Hakainde Hichilema to start looking suspiciously at his predecessor and others and not have a healthy relationship. What will happen is that it's now going to be a fight, political fight. You understand what I'm saying? This has repeated over time. What happened between Kaunda and Chiluba? Chiluba, instead of honoring Kaunda, Chiluba was forced to start verifying Kaunda. Next thing, for Kaunda to defend himself, he needed to go political. Because he realized now I cannot defend myself politically. You understand? And it wasted 5 years of Dr. Chiluba's time in office. Fast forward, when Chiluba handed over, the very person he brought to take over from him, Mwanawasa, and I'm speaking here as an individual, over and above being a spokesperson for Patriotic Front. Here, I'm speaking as Nakachinda. My analysis is that, look at how Mwanawasa, who should have actually even been helped by Chiluba, he verified Chiluba. To his death, Chiluba today is said to be a thief. Look at the time that Mr. Sata got into office. Even when Mr. Sata refused to go after Rupiah Banda, some of these people, the clique that is now going around the President Hakainde Hichilema, went and forced President Michael Sata and said, we need to remove Rupiah Bandas in a minute. They went and removed the Rupiah Bandas in a minute. What has been achieved out of that? Wasted time. I can tell you that the so-called fight against corruption in itself is a facade. It is all meant to please the external entities, to gain Mr. President Hakainde Hichilema some kind of fake accolades, but they will not last. He will harass PF officials, which he is doing. He has unleashed the deck on individuals, and they are doing things illegally, where they are going to search individuals without court warrants, and all those things, search warrants as it were. All this has been used and played before, not only in Zambia, but in other jurisdictions. That is to tell you, we are not economically free. We are being dictated to by outsiders, so that we can collectively, at the end of the day, look incompetent. Because in doing so, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema will not be able to perform. But you would have also rubbished the input and work of his predecessor. Put together, we are a bunch of failures as Zambians. That is a picture that some white fellow is enjoying out there and peddling, and we, like fools, we repeat the same script, which doesn't take us anywhere.
How do you still believe, Honorable, that your script or your manifesto on the patriotic front still remains viable in terms of liberating our country's, economy, or fulfilling the aspirations of Zambians economically away from the politics, compared to that of the UPND? Because you were once in office, and all what you succeeded is, of course, leaving this country in huge debt, which has put more pressure on the leadership of President Hakainde Hichilema. Again, your government was also accused more of being one of the most corrupt, administration ever in Zambia. And maybe, I'm just saying maybe, some people agree with you when you say the UPND, you've termed it as a confused administration from the word go. Maybe it could be these problems, that they are found in office, and they can't just believe. That's why maybe they are confused because of the, the mess that you've put on their table.
Which mess are you talking about?
The debt, which you've just explained, of course.
You see, yeah. I think we talk as if these people are from Mars. It's amazing that we seem to be talking as if the ones who have taken over government are from Mars. The only thing that is working against the UPND is that their president has never come near to, governance. He has never been a councillor. He has never been an MP, or has never really been around government. And I appreciate his challenge, because maybe I could have also been in the same school of thought had I not been given the privilege to be Member of Parliament later as Minister. Parliament is a good school for those possibly that would want to ascend to the presidency, if you like. If you ask me, if I compared Jack Mwimbu, I compare Gary Nkombo, I compare Cornelius Mweton, and the number of people there who have been in Parliament for 5-10 years, they are far much better in understanding how government works than their president. The only thing is that the president will not consult them. He doesn't have that demeanor and humility to be able to consult. That's how come he's making mistakes. You understand? How do you know? I know
maybe
that.
He does consult.
Who does he consult?
You don't need to put that.
The reason why today, Mr. Innocent, the reason why today you have a government in place, ministers in place, but you can't feel that they are there. There's no work that is being done. Is because everything ends and starts and ends with Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. Look at Parliament. Parliament today is adjourning 1 hour into the business of Parliament because there's no work that is going there. That's the reality. You observe, Parliament is adjourning at 15 hours because outside the few questions that the opposition are asking, there's no business from government that is going through Parliament. And people are not observing such a critical situation. Let me bring one of a fundamental issue that you, the journalists, have missed out. President Hakainde Hichilema did make an appointment of Attorney General and Solicitor General. From zooming from our binoculars, we've noticed that certain processes have not been undertaken.
What are those? The
processes, because, I mean, those are expected not to be ratified. What is expected is that the Minister of Justice, in this case, Mr. Imbe, is supposed, through the President, to initiate a process to which Madam Speaker would be written to, that these have been appointed for ratification, you understand, and a select committee appointed to do all that process. Whether that is being undertaken or not, we are in doubt. But the appointments themselves that have been made, the more I reflect and deeply think about them, President Hakainde should not have made those appointments. Mr. Muchende, who's a brother of mine and a friend of mine, has been a personal lawyer for President Hakainde for many years. And they have dealt with each other at personal level, even at the time that he was working at Ministry of Lands. Those are facts. You understand what I'm saying? And he has defended him personally on some of the allegations personally himself.
But qualified, isn't it?
Listen, it's not about qualification.
Yeah.
That's why there is conflict of interest in life and in governance. So the moment, now, when it comes to all commitments that government makes, whether it is to do with claim, all manner of claims of negligence or indeed any liability that government may have incurred to individuals, entities, and so on, the one who's responsible to represent the state in that regard is the Solicitor General. What stops then Mr. Muchende as Solicitor General to look at, first of all, personal claims of Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, some of which he has initiated now that he's president, to go and just sign consent judgments and use that as a conduit to siphon money for the benefit of the president? You know where the conflict of interest comes in? Because this is a person who was litigating on behalf of the president. Today we're having people like Clayson Hamasaka, who has sued over, quote unquote, a matter that may have happened a few years ago, and is in State House. And a personal lawyer for President Hakainde is going to be Solicitor General. So when you analyze this whole situation, you may find that that could also be a conduit. If we don't zoom and watch, that will just be a conduit for siphoning resources. All we are saying is that the way this whole government is being structured by Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, there are many gray areas that needs to be questioned. And that is basically what our issue is. And it's good that you're asking these questions on a day like this, where we're discussing our independence.
Can we simply, Honorable, can we simply also maybe put a blame on your political party, which was once in power once again, that the reason why you made those what they have been described as terrible mistakes, such as the corruption issues, failure to create jobs as promised in the PF manifesto at the time, vis-a-vis the issue of lowering taxes. Can we say that the PF failed to do that because the late president, with due respect, Mr. Michael Chilufya-Sata, had appointed a person like the former president Edgar Lungu as a justice minister, defense minister, because he's a personal lawyer at the time when President Michael Sata was in the opposition? And I bring this question, is it wrong?
Okay.
Is it wrong to appoint somebody? If look, you and I were close. That's the truth. All right? But if at all you appoint me to work in a certain position and I'm qualified, what's wrong with that?
Okay. Why is it that, for example, if I am known to you and you are a judge, why is it that at a particular time, if I have a case before you, you are required to recuse yourself? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, President Lungu, though he was a lawyer for the party, at a particular time, he eventually vied to become member of parliament for Chawam. And he was a member of parliament. And therefore could only qualify to be appointed to in a policy position as minister, which is basically a policy position. But we're talking of an advocate on behalf of the state. There's a difference there. We're talking of an advocate on behalf of the state, a solicitor general, attorney general, for example. Those are institutional officers which are away from politics. And to that effect, those who are chosen, you must make sure that they are above board. Even you as head of state, you want somebody who is advising you legally, not to have a bias on the basis that possibly they are too close to you. They have some emotional attachment to you. And to that effect, their judgment when it comes to giving you legal advice possibly is influenced by your relation. You understand? That's how come professional lawyers, if they are too close, you are friends, and there's a matter to which you want them to represent you to court, they'll say, me, I can't represent you, I'm your friend. On this matter, I know you are innocent, but I'm your friend. I think what I can do is let me recommend another lawyer. That is basically on the basis of the principle of conflict of interest. All I'm saying is that the Solicitor General appointed by President Hakainde Hichilema is too close and has a long history of personal business and interaction with the head of state, which possibly could influence his professional conduct in that office.
Right. Honorable, we've got a few minutes to go, but let me just squeeze in a few questions regarding, of course, driving from the theme that we have, that the president has, spoken about the peace and unity of this country. It's very cardinal that during his tenure in office, he will ensure that this country gets back to where it was under the late President Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Let's talk about the unit. Have we learned something as a nation, and more especially you as politicians? What have you learned in the past 50, 60, today, 57 years of independence? What is that you have learned with regards to uniting this country? Because lately we've heard a lot of trouble remarks, and you are among the people that have been accused before that each time you stand on the pulpit to campaign, you don't have better message to give to the people of Zambia, but riding on tribalism.
It's amazing. I wish we you started with a rider that we don't have much time. This is a subject that requires a bit of time. Maybe
Can you just squash it a bit?
Yeah.
Then we'll come and finish it.
Let me tell you. One of the reasons for which we ended up with one-party state in 1972 is that, like I said, we started off very well, multi-party, democratic system of governance. But through external influences, all of a sudden, tribal sentiments began to creep into a political arena, including UNIP itself as a political party. I'm sure you have heard and read of a day or a night without a president. What was it that led to that scenario? Was tribal sentiments. The only convenient route to take at a time was, as it were, one-party state. You get a point. Because Tanzania equally faced the same situation, and many other countries who were the front-line countries. So they realized that the enemy is not from within, the enemy is from without. Yeah. So to prevent the enemy from without, to destabilize their agenda to liberate the continent, they needed to find a formula, and the formula was one-party state. But it was not the best of the governance system. Yeah. So in 1991, we went back to multi-party system, which brings to the fore the participation of citizens in the governance of their country through the democratic processes. And therefore, the better platform is multi-party democracy, because therefore it guarantees the freedom of association, freedom of expression, and all that. By the time we get into 1996, maybe people didn't watch that. In 1991, it was free for all. People stood wherever they were for as long as they were recognized as capable leaders. We had people from Southern Province winning in the northern part of the country, vice versa. But in 1996, an unfortunate debate began to creep into our politics. People began to say that the reason why members of parliament are not performing in those constituencies is because they don't come from there. And it was not curtailed. So by 1996, people now were packing their bags, rushing to their village to go and stand. You understand? And we tolerated that, debate. By 2001, Mr. Innocent, everybody now was being interviewed, interrogated on their quest to stand as members of parliament, whether or not they come from that particular village. You have already indirectly introduced tribalism and regionalism. You understand what I'm saying? Worse still, with other factors like I mentioned, by the time President Chiluba Mwanawasa was getting into office, when President Mwanawasa was pursuing and fighting the so-called fight against corruption, you know what happened? All of a sudden, it was because the target was President Chiluba. Basically, the ones who became victims were those who are associated or related to President Chiluba. The majority of people that were trotting to the courts that time were mainly from one region. You understand what I'm saying? We may not be courageous to talk about it, but that divided the country. President Chiluba had to start finding ways and means in which he can defend himself, both in court but politically. There was an attempt to even form a political party called PUD at the time, to try and create a political platform in defense of that. When PUD could not work, PUD eventually merged with the Patriotic Front. That's how Mr. Chitaru Sampa became chairman of Patriotic Front at the time. By the time and that's how Patriotic Front gained momentum, because the northern bloc, Luapula, Northern, Copper Belt, and part of Lusaka, because of the influence of Mr. Sata, coupled with the support of President Chiluba, gained momentum. The UPND, which was led by President Anderson Mazoka at the time, had mainly dominated the northern part, northwestern, and southern part of the country. And at the time, the chiefs of Southern Province gathered and said that this is a time for us to support our own person, which is basically tribal in nature. Now, this must be understood.
Wrong or that wrong or right?
Are you telling me? Now you are asking, you are saying that I'm one of those who stands on the platform to speak about tribalism. I'm giving you a scenario of how I understand this whole situation.
So if that was wrong,
listen.
Can we assume that that was wrong?
No. Don't put words in my mouth. Right. Just relax. In a few minutes I've given me, if you're able to conclude.
Go ahead.
When Mr. Mazoka died, and there was a question of succession in the political party of UPND, I'm sure you're old enough at the time. In that process, more tribal sentiments began to come. That's how Mr. Nakachinda Hichilema came in. He was proposed on the basis that only a Tonga should take over as president. Fast forward, that region has consistently, whether wrong or right, supported my elder brother, President Nakachinda Hichilema. And when we question that, you say we are being tribal. That's hypocritical. Today, a Minister of Finance, Dr. Msumbeko Msokotwani, went on the floor of Parliament to say that in terms of development, 3 provinces have been what? Have been shortchanged, if you like, discriminated against. So we are getting a loan from World Bank to build schools and other infrastructure, and our focus, we are not even shy to say, will be in those provinces. Which one? Southern, Northwestern, and I think slightly mentioned about Copper Belt, to try and blend it. But in other words, he's saying this region has been discriminated against on the floor of Parliament. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if I come myself on the platform of politics and say, the way the Tonga speaking people who are my relatives have been voting over the years is ethnic inclined and regional in nature, you come and say Nakachinda is being tribal. Not Musokotwani, not Misakainde, who came on the platform of UPND, proposed on the basis that is Tonga and therefore should take over from another Tonga. So I think let's not be hypocritical. Let's discuss these issues as real and realistic as they are, if we are to cure moving forward. The reason I raise this issue whenever I talk about this thing is that we need to begin to go back. Where did we get it wrong? I find that the #1 seed for regional politics is when we began to segregate that you, innocent, if you are to stand because you are a Piri, you must become a member of parliament in Eastern Province. That is wrong. You should be able to stand in Choma if you understand the challenges of the people of Choma, and you should be voted for even if it is not on UPND ticket. That's my advocacy. And I'm saying to my relatives, the same way you would want to be treated in other regions, treat other regions equally. That's when we can achieve one Zambia, one nation. You can't have one region be legitimate in voting in a particular manner and other regions are condemned if they advocate for that.
Quickly.
In terms of one Zambia, one nation, we must be honest, we must be bold, we must be fearless in dealing with the demon that has crippled into our politics and has the potential to divide us.
I've got 2 questions before the credits begins to run. My last, second last question is regarding the victory in Kaumbwe constituency. What does it mean for the PF now, after that, a huge humiliation that you encountered on the 12th of August this year? And we've been told that your political party is now dead. What does that victory entail?
Well,
I hope you can spend just a minute and then I ask another question.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, somebody jokingly said, since CPF is dead and buried, maybe the ghosts in Kaumbwe and Rusangazi went and voted against the living. Basically, it wasn't just. I mean, Patriotic Front is alive and vibrant, and we're going to put up a spirited, well-organized, strategic approach to reorganize ourselves. We do this. We will do this because we owe it to Zambian people to always have an alternative voice, alternative policies, alternative manifesto. The manifesto of Patriotic Front is very clear. It is potent today. We believe that with a few areas to tweak it as we move in the next 5 years, it will still be potent in 2026. We have to still reorganize ourselves in terms of leadership at grassroots, coming up to national level, which is a process that we're going to undertake. Learning lessons, obviously, from the past. What could have gone wrong with MMD, what could have gone wrong with UNIP, that eventually they couldn't reorganize themselves and continue to be relevant to the political life of this country. So for us, Kaumbwe was a good source of encouragement for the membership of the party, for the party itself. But I think we will not gloat about it. We will not be braggadocious about it. I think we have more work to do moving forward internally and also in engaging ourselves with the Zambian people. So I think we look forward to more hard work moving forward other than us celebrating just that one victory. I think there are more victories to be achieved as we go moving forward.
Just under a minute, Honorable, I will allow you to face into that camera in front of you. Of course, using your gadget with you there. How do you look at Zambia's future under the administration of President Hakainde Hichilema from now going to all the way to 2026 using the binoculars?
Well, I think the first thing I can say is that happy independence to every Zambian. We have one component to be proud of. 57 years of a journey, of a peaceful journey. Of course, troubled in many areas, politically and otherwise. But we remain peaceful, and peace is the foundation that we should never lose for any form of prosperity to be achieved. There's nobody who has built anything meaningful in the midst of trouble. I think we should cherish this peace. The future lies in the young people. I have great hope that with what we have experienced so far politically, we have enough experience to be able to discern politicians at a distance, whether they mean what they say or is basically feeding us with rhetoric, but when they are given an opportunity, they become a disaster. Today, the farmers are fixed. We had a situation where President Nakachinda and the UPND promised that immediately they get into government, the fertilizer, will reduce to 250 per bag, and they will give them about 16 bags. Is it 12 to 16 bags? But that is not the case. The farmers have been shortchanged. Today or yesterday, we saw a memo circulating that the farmers will not only buy their fertilizer at a higher price, but they will even, incur other costs of transportation, because under Patriotic Front government, there was a provision of local transporters to be able to take the fertilizer closer to the people. So in the agriculture sector, we are poised for a disaster. Food security is, threatened. Now the president has directed the guy at FRA, can you sell maize to find money to pay the farmers? Basic street economics. He has failed to find money. But all I can say is that we remain hopeful. The mere fact that the Zambians woke up in numbers and exercised their vote on the 12th of August, I want to believe that's the greatest revelation that has dawned on Zambians, that you can use your vote to be able to deal with politicians. And in this case, these who have lied are better than those who may have just been victims of coronavirus, climate change, and though we're on the right path in terms of economic prosperity for the country. So I'm very sure that moving forward, we'll be able to do the right thing as a people. We hope that Mr. Nakachinda is listening to what we're saying from the right perspective of things. We're not just criticizing because we don't like him. We are criticizing because we want him to perform. We may be robust, we may be vicious in our criticism, but he needs to sober up and listen. And if he listens to us, he may just perform. But if he reacts emotionally, it will be disaster after disaster. Our role is to provide checks and balances. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you so much, Honorable, for coming. I wish it wasn't for our lack of democracy in the studio. We would have gone on like that.
Right.
Thank you so much. Right. All right, allow me to end our discussion here. My guest has been Honorable Raphael Nakachinda, coming from the Patriotic Front as a spokesperson and, of course, a member of the Central Committee. I want to believe that he's managed to answer some of the questions that you had. And allow me to appreciate my team in the studio, Christopher and Obvious Kapunda, and also upstairs, Gabriel. Thank you so much for that fantastic work. To you, the people of Zambia, like I always say, may God bless Zambia, may God bless Mother Africa. Good night.